Okay, a little delay here in starting the meeting. We're waiting for a quorum. This is the Gloucester Historical Commission, May 1st meeting.
I got Tim and Ralph. Ralph's an attendee too. Lillian looks like she's an attendee, and there's a 603 one call-in listener. And Peter Gannon from the MBTA. I don't.
Oh, I see Ralph is here. Let's see. I see you, Ralph, later on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I had the right URL or not. Anyway, I'm here.
Yeah, here. And Jude said that he would appreciate your taking the notes because he's on another computer he's not that familiar with, and
Sure.
he doesn't have his equipment to take notes.
Sure.
Oh, Lillian, it's good to see you. Thank you. And Tim, you're here. Okay. All right, well, we can call this meeting.
There's someone from the MBTA and someone from a 603 area code is listening in. Should we, I don't know what to do about them. I don't even know if they can hear it.
Well, can we bring them in? Because they're gonna need to do a presentation.
Yeah, I thought I saw Jeremy, who was the contact. I thought he was already in as a panelist.
Yeah, this Peter, looks like Peter Gannon. And somebody called in as attendees, but I don't have any capability to enter them. And Jeremy just disappeared, it looks like. Peter's in.
Okay, so Jeremy had a panelist link, so I don't know if he just dropped off, so he should be able to get back in. And you have a quorum, so you can get started.
Okay. This is Bob Whitmarsh, co-chair of the Gloucester Historical Commission. This is a remote meeting by Zoom. And this is a special provision by the governor that will allow meeting without meeting in person. And we'll do everything possible to make it so that we can accommodate the needs of anyone that needs to do a presentation or have comment. There is a link to a Zoom link for this. It's Gloucester Mass Gov Zoom.us 1-843-394-10970. I think that is available probably on the city website. Okay, so we will begin the agenda with the approval of the minutes. We have here approval of the March 27th minutes, but I'd like to first, because we did not approve them, the February minutes of, let's see here, February 27th.
I sent both of those out today.
Right. And did everyone get a chance to review those notes?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Are we familiar enough with them that we can vote, or is there somebody that feels they would like to have more time? Okay.
I'm okay.
All right. Does anyone make a motion on this? This will be for the February 27th minutes.
I'll make the motion that we approve the February 27 minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay. And those in favor? Should we do a roll call on that? Why don't we do a roll call? We'll start with Jude.
Yes.
Okay. Ralph?
Yep.
Lillian?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay, and myself? Yes. Okay, was approved unanimously. Now, the March 27th minutes. I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, and we'll start with Susan here.
I approve.
Okay, Jude,
Yes.
okay, Ralph,
Yes,
Lillian,
Yes.
and here Bob, yes, I approve. So that also passed unanimously. Okay, the MBTA has a request for historic railroad bridge signage. This will be placed at the Gloucester Station, right near the depot in downtown, or the center of Gloucester. And I don't know, has anyone seen the packet on that with the showing what the sign would look like?
yeah, I looked at it, you had sent it. I can't say that I read through the entire package. There was quite a bit
Right.
of background there, but
Yeah, I don't think for our purposes, it was necessary to read through every bit of that.
Yeah.
Most important thing would be what the sign is gonna be, and also where it was gonna be placed, and whether it was appropriate and accurate for what it's intended for. So, does anybody else have a comment on this?
no, just to confirm, it's going to be placed between the tracks and the parking area for the station, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah,
I think it's on the other side of the tracks from the place where you wait. I'm not sure.
exactly. Yeah, that's what
Yeah, I have it here. That's correct. It shows in the background, it shows the discount auto parts.
exactly.
Right, that's in the background, and there's a nice walkway here with a green and a little area with shrubs and trees. It's kind of attractive looking, and I think it's a good place for the sign. And it certainly would be more noticed there than if they put it over by the bridge itself. Who's going to see it over there, you know?
Yeah,
And I think it's great to educate people on the significance of the original bridge that was up over for 100 years. And I know I went over that bridge many times on the train. I never went over on foot. There are a few people that did. Probably many, actually. Okay, so Susan, do you have any comment on this?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay,
I mean, sounds like a
And-
great idea.
right, yeah, it is. And Jude, did you get a chance to see it?
I haven't seen it, no.
Okay, and
We just see the sign.
right, and Lillian,
I haven't seen it.
okay. So, well, that's great. Maybe look at this here coming up. Oh, this will solve the problem.
Oh, is that the sign?
That would be the sign. I think somebody is presenting this.
Yeah, this was the package that was emailed out, actually, probably a little bit more than a month ago. I think it was on your last agenda, but I don't think it was discussed.
Yeah, we didn't discuss it last time.
That's correct, yeah. Now, I see Peter Gannon from the MBTA.
I'm
but he's
also-
mute-
This is Jeremy Fontaine. I'm also here as well.
Okay, okay,
That's,
good.
I like that sign. It looks like they did a really good job.
And it meets all the National Park Service designs, and that's part of the maintenance of agreement that we have with Gloucester Historic. So that's that sign that you would see at National Park.
Right. I like the placement I like that placement of the sign as well.
yeah. The only question I have is, do we need to approach DPW about this, or is this something that the MBTA has already done?
It would be within our right of way, like, so it wouldn't be any other property, other ownership.
Okay. That
That's
makes
good.
it easy. Yeah.
That's good. Wonderful. Yeah. I think that's an awesome spot right there.
Hmm.
Very attractive looking. And I think the sign is really great.
Yeah, I think they did a good job on the sign.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other considerations from the members there that we have any questions about this?
No, I think it's very nice.
Okay,
Mm,
Um,
beautiful.
yeah, are we prepared to take a vote to support?
Could I- Would I
Yes.
be able to say one thing? I don't want to step out of line or out of
Okay.
order. So I just wanted to give you just a quick history. So if Gloucester Historic gives us concurrence with the design, I just want to let you know the next steps, part of the MOA is it goes to Mass Historic Commission. And then for their review, and then once it's completed, that would wrap up our condition in the MOA. And we let FTA know both. We provide FTA your letter of concurrence and MHC's letter of concurrence. And then that kind of wraps up the whole procedure and allows Peter Gagnon, he's the PM of the project. He will then be able to source the sign and then it would be installed.
Okay, that's great, Jeremy. So what you're gonna need from us is a letter that will be, that'll eventually go to the Mass Historical Commission.
Yeah, please. Yeah, just a letter of just concurring with the design review as part of the 2018 MOA that was provided in the email.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, and we'll take a vote on that. And we'll need a motion from a
A
member.
motion.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Okay, all right, Susan,
I approve. Beautiful.
okay, and Jude,
Yes.
okay, Ralph,
Yes.
okay, and Leon,
I think it's a really nice sign. Yeah, I approve.
and Bob here. I also approve, and that passage unanimously, and I'll work on a letter. Now, would this be something I'd be coordinated with you, Jeremy? This letter?
Yes. Yep. And I think I sent you an email, so you should have my email as well, but I can also spell it out now if it's easier for you.
Right, yeah, if you would send me another email, so it'll be nice and fresh. I want to go looking for it.
Yeah, sure. I could do that tomorrow.
Okay, and we'll get started on that for you, all right?
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone else.
Okay, well, you're welcome. Okay, all right, now, let's see. Next item here would be determination of historic significance of the WPA murals and city-owned sculptures and plaques. And we have here Karen Muscadon. She is the chair of the Committee for the Arts. And would you like to make some comments on this, Karen?
I would love to. Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm chairing the Committee for the Arts. It was newly formed, reformed by Mayor Verga when he came in. It had been relatively dormant for a while, so much of the work that we're proposing to do we're in the process of applying for community preservation funds for the historic, under the historic preservation category. And much of the work that we're proposing has been deferred for many years. And so we want to get the process started so that there are murals, sculptures, and bronze plaques throughout the city that really need attention. So we're going to be applying for CPC funding. The application is due tomorrow. And we are asking the Historic Commission to make a determination that the city-owned murals, sculptures, and plaques are historically significant to the city. That's basically what this request is tonight. I can tell you a little bit more about what we're planning to do with the funding if we are awarded the funding. There's two categories of professional assessments that need to be done of all of the sculptures. There are something on the order of 8 to 10 publicly owned sculptures throughout the city, and something on the order of 36 historic bronze plaques. So they need to be, those two categories of objects need to be assessed by a professional art conservation firm to determine, what they need and then so we can start to price them out and start to do the work. The third category are the WPA murals. As you know, many of them are, in place in various buildings around the city, but there are a number of them underneath the stage in the auditorium in City Hall, rolled up and not preserved in any
Really?
stretch of the word. And they've been there for many years. And they were assessed by Williamstown Art Conservation Center back in 2018. And that assessment will be updated, hopefully, with if we are awarded the CPC funding. We'll update that assessment and undertake restoration of 2 categories or 2 of those murals that were prioritized when Williamstown looked at them back in 2018. There was one by Frederick Stoddard and one by Oscar Anderson. So we would undertake to start restoration and conservation work on those 2 murals. So that's what we have in mind to do. The timeline for this CPC funding that we're applying for now would be awarded by the end of the year, but it wouldn't come through to us until 2024. And then we'd have through 2025 to do the assessments and do this work that we're proposing to do. So it'd be about a year and a half project starting next year at this time. So we're asking for a determination, which is required to access the funds under the historic preservation category. We're asking for a determination by this commission that the murals, the sculptures that are owned by the city, and the bronzes that are owned by the city are historically significant to the city and warrant being considered under the historic preservation category.
You have a list of those assets?
Well, I have a list of the murals. I do not have a full and complete list of the sculptures or the bronzes. Part of the work we're proposing to do this year with ARPA funding that's apparently coming through the city is to do a full inventory of the sculptures and the bronzes so that we'll know when we contract for the assessments to be done next year, we'll have that inventory up to date.
Can you share that inventory with us when you're done?
Absolutely.
Just out of
Absolutely.
curiosity, because
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't realize there was that many plaques around town, bronzes.
Yes.
Another question. So do you have is there some kind of triage for
Yes.
the most critically endangered items to be preserved first?
There will be when we have these
Awesome.
assessments done, which is the
Awesome.
first step.
Because I was
Yes.
unaware that there were also, I didn't even realize that, I know there's the murals around town, I work at O'Malley and there's
Yes.
Viking one.
Yes. Yeah.
But I didn't realize that there were however many you said underneath the stage at City Hall.
Yeah. I don't know how many total. I just know that these 2 were prioritized when they were looked at before. And so those are the ones that we would tackle first, but we would get an assessment of all of them and have that assessment up to date.
So if that assessment identified ones that were just in as much need, that would be a priority to preserve those.
Yes, for maybe later funding cycles. Yeah. So we'll be doing some phased work of this, obviously over years. And hopefully, as we're sort of getting stronger policies around this kind of work, that the conservation and the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of them could be in more of a schedule than they have been in the past.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to have an idea of what's actually out there
Yes.
and what needs to be attended to quickly
Exactly. That is the
before it's
priority.
gone.
Yeah, it's the priority of the Committee for the Arts right now. It's the main job and the main role of the Committee for the Arts is to look after and steward the publicly owned artworks because they're priceless, and they're so important to the city. So,
I think having an inventory and having an accountability of where they are and what they are is very, very important to the history of the city.
Yeah.
Is there a plan?
Yes,
Sorry, Bob.
go ahead, Ralph.
Is there a plan to display the ones that are tucked away under the
Yeah, good
stage?
question.
How
I
are they
hope-
gonna be appreciated? Yeah,
That's another whole thing. I hope so. And we all hope so. It would be a matter of finding the right wall in the right building. I have no idea right now where that would be. So there's no plan in place for
Hmm.
that. We just know that they need to be restored and stabilized, you know, for now. And then, yeah, then we would undertake a study of, you know, like where's the best place for this, you know, and how can they be preserved forever?
Right.
would you engage the museum in that? I'm not sure.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of the museum, Miranda Aisling, is the community outreach person with the museum now, and she's on the committee for the arts too now. So we work closely with her on that committee. Committee's very strong now. I'm really optimistic about the work that we can get done over this next year or so.
Yeah, well,
The-
sounds great.
The amount of bronzes too, like I work with the shellfish department too, and there's even like a little, you know, ye old public landing, it's about that big at the
Yeah.
head of Little River. It's like that kind of stuff that if I went by there in the summertime, I probably wouldn't have noticed it in the undergrowth, but like I happened to be there in the winter and I was like, I've been in Gloucester for like 20 something years now. And I'm like, I've never noticed this little plaque. You
Yeah,
know, it's like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It'd be great to have an inventory of, it maybe an inventory and then a background of
yes,
why that was placed there. You know,
Yes.
why is the plaque there? Why is, you know, that would be great just to have like even on the city's website of, you know, just out of curiosity.
that and what it says, you know, the text from all of the plaques is something that we've talked about, including in the inventory, because some of the plaques commemorate things in our colonial history, you know, that kind of need reconciliation these days a little bit, or contextualization. So we're looking at that as well to see if there may be an opportunity to, you know, educate ourselves about what they were commemorating and when, and, you know, if there's any sort of, you know, contextualization we need to do as a community. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think most of us on the commission have seen the murals in City Hall at least. And then there are many more that are sort of in places where we might not know about them. And I think it would be really great to have an inventory of them. Maybe some kind of a book would be eventually depicting these, and you know. And knowing the history of how these murals came about from the WPA program that was to help the economy coming out of the Great Depression and back in the 1930s. And it was hiring artists to do these works in communities all over. And the interesting thing for Gloucester is that the mayor of Gloucester, his name was Newell, he was a personal friend of Franklin D. Roosevelt. And he was very close to him. And Franklin D. Roosevelt had a lot of connection to Gloucester. And as a matter of fact, he had his presidential yacht. It was anchored off of Eastern Point, and he was accompanied by the Navy for safety and security, you know. But he did something. He left the Navy, and he went up the Annisquam River, and they couldn't go up. It
That's great.
was a great political thing.
Great piece of history.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we
Yeah.
got more than our share, we'll say,
yes,
of that work. There's a ton of it.
yeah,
And I took a program at the Boston Architectural College, and when I chose for my one of the courses of my main paper was a study on City Hall and all those murals and artwork throughout City Hall, which is so much of, and it's so interesting how much there is and how significant it is. It isn't just the fact that it's beautiful art, it tells a wonderful story about Gloucester
Mhm.
and the people, you know, and what Gloucester is about.
Yeah.
So I do think that this is a wonderful thing. Any other comments from Susan? What are your thoughts?
I'd love to see an inventory and know a lot more about all of these assets. So
Right,
much in favor.
right.
I was just in City Hall the other day and I admire those murals every time I'm there.
Right,
And the sculptures include the Joan of Arc, the Man at the Wheel, the one
Yeah.
at Henry Lane, you know,
Oh.
the war memorials. So,
oh, yes,
yeah. So it's a lot to undertake and to preserve, but it's, you
now
know,
there's a sculpture, I think it's a Civil War sculpture that's near Warren Street in the front yard of the City Hall. Is that one of them?
yes,
Yeah.
there's yep, there's, yes.
Yeah.
There are something like 8 to 10 sculptures besides the bronzes, but 8 to 10
Right.
sculptures that would be assessed by the firm that is awarded the contract, so.
Right. That's
Does the
wonderful.
city own, what is it? It's like a little, maybe it's a Walker Hancock or something in Stage 4 Park, that little, I don't even remember what it is, mermaids or something.
There's a sculpture called Trident,
Yeah,
and that is actually owned, we learned, by the Generous Gardeners
really?
nonprofit. Yes, they had connected with the Garden Club or the Garden Commission, Beautification Commissions. I'm not sure what it is exactly, to
Right.
do their work on Stage Fort Park, you know, and along the boulevard. And they took ownership of that down and they've maintained it and they have preserved it, and also that's an example of what should be done with all of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I've seen that. Yes, very important.
yeah.
Lillian, what would you
Yeah,
like to
I
say?
guess, well, I totally support preserving, and I didn't realize how many, sculptures there were, or whatever. I'm just amazed always at how much there is in Gloucester. But I wonder too, if I remember right, the last time when they voted on the voters, the Gloucester citizens voted on the CPA funds, it was, you could do 1%, 2%, 3%, and I think we only voted for 1%. So I
That's
wonder if there's any
Yep.
kind of movement, to organize to maybe get it on the ballot next time and up it to 3%, so we have more money to
Money.
restore more.
Yeah.
Right, and we
for that.
also get a match from the state.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be a big help, I think.
It would be.
It used to be a dollar for dollar match, but it's less than that. It might be more like 30% of what the tax would be added to. And what's important is that it isn't on there's a certain amount of valuation that is exempted from the tax. So somebody who has a modest home would not contribute much, if anything, if the valuation was low enough. So it doesn't hurt people who are, don't own significant properties. So that it kind of goes with their economic standing. So the argument would be some people can't afford it, so by doing that exemption, I forget the exact dollar amount, it might be 200,000, something like that. I'm not even sure, but it does help with that situation. And actually, even on a property that has a fair assessment, I notice on my tax bill, it's not very much money. I'm happy to pay it because I think it does so much for the city. There's so many different areas that the CPA funds go to that I think are so crucial to the well-being of the city. So good causes. Okay, would someone like to make a motion for
I'll
supporting
motion.
this?
I'll
Okay,
motion to support it.
and I'll second that. Okay, and we'll take a vote here. Susan?
Yes, I support it.
Okay, and Jude?
Yes.
Okay, and Ralph?
Yes.
And Lillian?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, and Bob Whitmarsh here? Yes. Okay, very good. That passed unanimously. I guess you need a letter from the Historical Commission
Yes.
deeming that we consider this to be of historic significance. I'll do that, and I'll be in touch with you. You might want to send me an email and I can respond to that, so you'll
Okay.
be sure to get it.
Okay,
Okay.
happy to do it. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay. Well, you're
Really-
welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for doing what you're doing. It's very
Yeah.
important.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All right, bye-bye.
sure. Bye-bye. Okay, the next item on here is the stage 4 Cannon site. And, you know, I was involved in this in the beginning. And, I'm kind of surprised at what they're doing, but
I'm,
I think-
to be honest with you, I'm a little chapped at what happened.
yeah. But
To put it frankly, in a recorded meeting, I'm a little chapped. I saw the booms they had put out to prevent the runoff. And I was like, oh, what's that? And I walked down there the next day and it was absolutely gutted. All the 4 gun emplacements, they had one dug up and filled in with like pea gravel. And they had all the other ones. I was down in the holes.
What are
right,
they doing with them?
No one told us.
yeah. You know,
Well, they went and they redid, so the one that they put on the boulevard with the new carriage, never heard that was happening. I saw that, you know, when I found out about that, when it was in the newspaper. And then this. So the last 2 things they've done were just kind of circumventing. I don't think David Dow really cares to discuss anything with us after the first Cannon thing. Which I don't think that thing, now that comes out once a year, twice a year, since I'm shed somewhere.
I'm really shocked considering how Mary Ellen LaPont, this was like a big cause of hers, that anything being dug up there, or, you know, that there would be artifacts and, you know, things from, and how how important that site was. So, and I can't believe there weren't some people involved at that stage at DPW that were aware or had conversations about this. So
I
I'm
think-
really shocked.
I guess, you know, somewhere along the line, somebody should have had this overseen by somebody who was a little bit in the know on how to preserve a historic site and how they could still get what they wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't realize they were going to, you know, excavate it to that point, you know, where you wouldn't be able to tell if there's ever anything there.
So
Uh,
I have a
didn't
couple
a-
things,
Yeah, go ahead.
like I emailed Bill to get a copy of that report that Pal did, or UMass did. I recall a conversation with the archaeologist that said, if you do this, this is the place that you probably want to do some test pits beforehand. And I can't find anything in the Stage 4 Park Committee's minutes that actually had a plan attached to those minutes. So I don't know where this all came about, you know, not to sound conspiratorial, but
Right.
I do recall reading somewhere that they didn't want to deal with the CPC because it was too much. So honestly, I don't know where any of this came about, but it went from the original, from what we looked at to, and granted, I went down in the holes and there wasn't too much of anything in them other than clay and like maybe rusty bolts, and like there was a couple chunks of, I think I took a picture of it. There was some chunks of like, it looked like burnt wood, but there wasn't any like masonry behind it. But who knows what's under those piles? They pulled out the firework vault thing. I'm curious to see like if they start doing work on the magazine, whether they're going to open that up. Like, I don't know if they filled that in or what, whether they just put a wall up and that's open underneath there, like vaulted into that magazine, but I'd be curious to see but I haven't been up there again since the day
That little stone structure that's.
yeah, so that little
Yeah,
like stone doorway has got like mortared granite blocks blocking it.
yeah,
But inside of that was the powder magazine. Like there's pictures of where they had like it vented out and stuff.
right.
Is there
Well-
anything at this point that can be done, or do we have any
No.
authority or?
We don't, it was more of a recommendation, but I just feel like it would be a courtesy from one city organization to another city organization to, like, the Stage Ford Advisory Committee is not, their priority is not historical. Their priority is like beautifying Stage 4 Park.
Yeah,
And I mean, I have a 2-page memo somewhere about like a brief narrative of the history. It's, you know, it's one of the oldest forts in Massachusetts that's still there
mhm,
in some semblance. Like if you look at some of the French and Indian War era forts, they're out in like the woods of like Heath, you know, they're just, it's on someone's land. They're like a brick pile and, you know, nothing else. Like there's at least, despite the fact that it's changed over time,
Right.
there was like, I would hope that someone looked at something, but the last time they came to us with like a plan of the fort, they had the wrong fort. They had the one at the other side, you
mhm.
know, so I don't know that anyone's really vetting anything that's being done. In the report from UMass identified some areas where, you know, they suggested test pits, like if they were going to put a path through where the playground is or something up behind the visitors center, like there was probably the barracks were probably the 1812 barracks were probably on that flat land, and the 1898 barracks were absolutely there, you know, so that kind of stuff would be, I mean, I know that it looked like I think what she was saying, I had to go back and look at the report, but it looked like they put fill on top of it. It wasn't like stripped down. At some point, the city had put fill in, but I would have expected a little bit better
Mhm.
on the part of the Stage 4 Park Advisory Committee.
Does it make sense? Send them
Well-
over and ask in future,
Well-
or does that just increase the bad blood?
I'm not sure if anything can be done, actually, at this point. I think they're they dug themselves into a hole here, literally.
No pun intended.
And you know, I think the whole thing here is that when it is all done, it'll be beautiful in its way, but it will be without some of the historical elements that we would like to have seen preserved in the process. And I did know that they were going to do away with the mounds, and I didn't like that idea because I feel the mounds actually kind of go with being a fort, you know, and they made sense. And without the mounds, you don't really have the feeling of it being a fort.
I would hope there's going to be something that maintains some kind of integrity to that being the fort. Otherwise, it's just a lookout point. It's a headland.
Right.
It's not anything else without the like bastion there. What it looked like is I'm wondering, because they were putting a lot of like, so where they dug it down, the one that the Parrot rifle, the one that looks out at 10 Pound Island. So there was one that looked out, and then there was 3 that aimed out, like
Outward.
up towards like Freshwater Cove.
Yeah.
The one that aimed that had like, they had dug that and they had put all that like crushed stone in it. So I'm wondering if they're putting something in there to put those cannons on, and I'm wondering if the one on the boulevard on the wooden trucks is going to go back out there, because even though 2 of them are replicas, they're still I think they were cast in like 1903 or 1906 for the Constitution, and then they were dispersed when the Constitution was being retrofitted. I want to say in the 30s, they were dispersed among communities. And I want to say, so we have 3. There's 2 here on Cape, there's 2 in Gloucester, and there's 1 in Rockport in front of on whatever it is, Broadway, that runs up the middle by the church there.
Yes, I know what you mean.
That's another one. So the rest of them, I have a list somewhere of like they would disperse, or I lost it in the move, but they would disperse about the Commonwealth. But we have 2 of those. I don't know where, I couldn't figure out where they got, so the 1848 one, the one that was closest to the magazine, is an original, that's an actual cannon. The 2 next as you walk out were replicas. And then the Parrott rifle that they retrofitted to fire salutes was an original. And I'm wondering if they're gonna put, like, if they're gonna bring the fort back to like, maybe it's Civil War iteration, fine. If they're just gonna bulldoze it and make it a place for people to like go sit, I would be a little concerned. But my biggest concern was like, I didn't see anything in their minutes, the available minutes, of any kind of inquiry into what might be under that ground. They didn't have anything that, like, even core samples, like no one knew what was behind that earthworks until they started digging. And I get the sense that once they bulldozed into it, if they found masonry or whatever, that's in that pile on the other side now. It's all out of context. I don't think there's anything we can do.
What about in the minutes here? Should I just leave it alone, or should I just make a statement that it's unfortunate?
Well, what do you think, Jude?
I mean, I don't know, from an official standpoint, like there's
Right.
nothing we can really do about it.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's gonna be bad blood per se, because I don't think there's any blood, because we haven't had any dealings with the Stage Board Advisory Committee in what, 4 years?
Mm.
Well, I like to come from this point, and that is to give them credit for the things that are good. Now they, you know, their goal and our goal is somewhat different, and it's hard for people. This is what we have to understand, is that we're in a community, and this is true of many communities, where some people are very aware of what historic preservation is and the historic significance is of a site like this fort. And other people, they just, they're not aware of it, you know? And, you know, I believe that with all good intentions, they've got themselves in the situation where we've lost something, probably, but we just have to go from this point and give them support. And when I say give them support, we can also encourage them to be sure that they keep in communication, and if there's anything that, you know, we can help them in terms of keeping something that is historic, more historic than it might have ever been. If we're not involved, then there's not going to be a lot of hope, you know. And I think that is as important as the beautification of Stage Fort Park in the Boulevard, is the history that's associated with going all the way back to really before the founding of this community, you know, with the Native Americans. And there's probably a lot that's been lost from when the Native Americans were here. And there are some regulations, which are federal, that you're not supposed to disturb certain things, and that from the Native Americans, especially if there's anything connected to grave sites and things like that, you know. So I think there needs to be some oversight, or at least maybe some cooperation between those that are doing the work and planning the work with historic organizations such as this Historical Commission. There are others that also have a lot of expertise, and that should probably be involved in something like this. It's kind of very important. And you know, this got by me, really, you know, and this is not really going exactly the way I thought it was going to go. And I actually was not in favor of removing the mounds and making it look less like a fort. Now, someone argued that the mounds weren't always there, but the mounds have been there for a long time.
Well,
And I
the
think
mounds, the mounds have been there since 1812 at least.
Right, now that's a long time.
The
So,
mounds were the first. I mean, I don't know, the first record I could find of a fort
right,
is the Revolution,
right,
1775.
right.
At any rate, that's 240 something years
Right.
that earthworks were at that site. And it doesn't look like the Civil War fort anymore because those bricks were probably taken away and are in someone's foundation. But if it wasn't, I guess what really burned me about it is that if it was like over where the life-saving station was, I had no idea that was there until I looked at pictures. The fort is like, when people walk up there's plaques everywhere. It's called Stage Fort. There were, until, I don't know, a year ago or whatever, 4 cannons there. So anybody that walks up there knows that's a fort. Where did you hear that the mounds were going for good, Bob?
I thought that was in the plan, that they were going to have it so that you could see, have more ability to see. With the mounds there, the higher ground, you don't really get a good view of the harbor.
So they
Although-
basically are just eradicating the fort aspect of Stage Fort.
Somewhat, yeah, and yeah, I think they're doing more than they need to do, but, here's the thing. They're trying to make this probably more accessible for more people to get there. And I was thinking about this. We have Tablet Rock, and you can climb up over the steps that are kind of, they're not very, they're not easy to go up these steps and through maybe poison ivy and, shrubbery and growing around. And the steps aren't really real steps. They're just pieces of rock. And so the thing about it is, I think I'll make this handicap accessible for everything. Part of the charm of the history is the hikeability and the rustic feel of the site. Being not to be modernized to the point where it's just an easy place to walk through. I think it's sort of a challenge for people. I think they can make it safer, but they still keep the history. And I think they can make it more accessible without ruining history. And I think that's where it comes in. We have to, and I think this is as much our fault in a way. When I say our fault, is that we should have made a real big point about this when we had the opportunity. And we kind of, gave them support. And I still think that they have all good intentions. And overall, they're doing a great job.
It was on the tail end of the Dogtown issue, and I don't think there was community support for it, but I also don't think, the 6 people I talked to in the half hour I was there were appalled at the fact that they were like, what is that? Like, what just happened?
Right. Well, I'd
I
like to
think-
think, I'd like to think when it's done, that we'll feel better about it.
Yeah, I hope there's gonna be some kind of fortness to it. Like, when you
Right.
think about it, like, we have the Fort neighborhood, and no one knows why they call it that, because there was a fort there, but it wasn't the best location, because if you overshot that fort, you hit the town.
That's the problem.
It's
Well,
Stage Fort was through, even the Spanish-American War, it was active. They moved a company of artillery from Easton Point because it was easier in case the Spanish attacked us, it was easier to fight them off from there.
Right.
It is a pretty, to me, it's like if they decided they were going to just move the fisherman statue. It's like that much of an iconic aspect of it. So I hope whatever they have planned, and I would love to be able to look at those plans, but it doesn't seem like we're going to see them. I would hope that if they're going to do any other work and something is found then they would give a little bit of leeway to look into what that is, because even just looking through old newspaper articles about stage 4, like if you go onto any of the newspaper sites and you look up Stage 4 Park and skeletons, you're going to find at least 5 of them where a
Now,
skeleton
the
is
thing
found.
here is that what has been done so far, I don't think there's a lot that we're gonna be able to get back from
Oh,
what
no.
has happened.
No.
And the only thing I can say now is we can invite them to those that are involved in this to come meet with us and tell us more about what they're doing and get some input from us. And not to say that we're going to tell them how to do it, but let's at least have the opportunity to know what we think and, what, we might have some ideas that might improve things for overall good, I think that I think we should keep a positive attitude about this. It is a little disturbing, very disturbing, but we are where we are. And we need to realize that a lot of this is done with good intentions. And this is what happens when you have people who are working with certain ideas and they're not using the same ideas that we have, which would be to preserve history. And that's a very important part of this the whole thing. Stage 4 Park is its history, and as well as being a beautiful site. And that history is what people really come to Gloucester to find out about, because we go right back to the very earliest days of the nation and all the conflicts that took place. This fort had something to do with each one of those all the way along. So I think that one thing they could do, I don't know if they get some old photographs of what the fort looked like and put up some plaques and some information. This is information that never was, there originally. I used to go up there when I was young, and I looked at these cannons. And I'm wondering, what's the story with these cannons? What are they? How old are they? And what were they used for? And I tried to imagine what it would have been like, firing those cannons. And I think they were more of a threat to enemies than it was actually, a real deterrent. Would you say, Jude, on that? It wasn't really a real deterrent. It was more of a threat.
Yeah, I mean, the War of 1812 was probably my guess is that was the one where it was the most active. Because it wasn't fortified till after Gloucester was shelled in the Revolution. That was like an afterthought. It was like, oh, we better put something here. The War of 1812, we were blockaded. So there was always that threat of some British vessel chasing something into the harbor.
Yeah.
And we were a nation. It wasn't like we were in rebellion. We were like sovereign by that point. In the Spanish-American War, I mean, it was a quickie, but there was, I think the people in coastal communities felt better if there was some kind of like artillery or, I know there was like anti-submarine guns around Cape Ann in World War II, but there was also a threat, like U-boats were sinking fishing trawlers. So, I mean, that kind of stuff I think it was like a better to have and not need than need and not have philosophy when it came to like coastal fortifications.
Mhm.
I mean, there's plenty of better places. It would be like a last resort, but if you think about like Gloucester Harbor without the breakwater, it's a much wider opening than having a scud around that half-mile long,
Right. Much
Um,
harder to defend.
I mean, when you look at how far those guns could shoot, though, they had a long range, like those, the 1848 gun would have been on a ship, like something the size of the Victory, like a first-rate warship, rather than I have to go back and look through the notes. Like the Parrott rifle was an Army, like the Army managed coastal fortifications and the Navy fought on ships. So you would have Army ordnance on coastal fortifications. So you wouldn't necessarily have that naval gun was it was on a ship. Like it was on a very big vessel. I can dig back through I have a string of emails with the guy who keeps the Civil War cannon register from back in
That
2008.
would be, I think that'd be very interesting to everyone involved in this.
He could go through and just with the markings I gave him, I took a bunch of and stuff I couldn't read. He was like, oh, it would say, you know, X, Y, and Z, and this is the guy who proofed it, and this is the guy who made it, and it's one of 240 and blah, 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 blah. Like the guy I have a string of emails back and forth with him. So I can share that. I can dig it up. I think I have a document that has all that information in one place. I'll have to find it and I'll share it with you guys.
So as far as the minutes,
No.
does
Yes.
this statement sound okay? I just put the opinion of the GHC is that the work done damaged the historic fabric of Stage 4th Park. The GSC stands ready to assist in the future to help preserve the historic site and artifacts of the park. I mean, I don't know what else to put in the minutes.
Well, I think that actually we should probably have a motion and have a statement about that
Yeah.
Because if you make an opinion as a note taker without
Okay.
the input of all the members together, I think that might be important. I think that a careful motion here, when I say careful, one that is productive, and we'll get the results we're looking for while still allowing them to accomplish their goal as well.
I mean, we could make a motion to just look into what's going on, like motion to get
Right.
further clarification on that
Do we
work.
should we invite someone from the Sage Fort Advisory Committee?
I mean, I think that'd be a good idea. I know David Dow's experience with us
Yes,
wasn't
he's done,
positive, but
yeah, he's done some nice presentations, and I think he does come from a good spot. And I think that this is an oversight. And I know it's disturbing to us, but I don't think it was done with malice.
I'd like to see the plans going forward. So maybe we make a motion to like look into this matter further.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be like, we're not censoring, like, we don't really have any kind of,
And we don't want to slow the work down either, because they need to move forward.
yeah.
And
But it would be nice to know, and then it just at least, I guess, put them on record that should something be found, like, that's what I think of it in the stages of you dug a bunch of holes in a at least 300-year-old fort and luckily didn't find something or disturb something, but like when it's found, and if it is human remains, everything stops. The state police has to come up, the medical examiner has to come up, like human remains will stop everything. And if it's determined to be native, then there's a whole other
that's
process to go through. So, I mean, it would be in their best interest to have somebody that knows about those matters be around when they start digging big holes.
right.
Okay, how
Well,
about
that's
this?
fine. Yes.
Assuming we make a motion, I'll say a motion is made to
Okay.
invite a representative of the Stage 4th Park Committee to present. their
Advisory
plans.
Advisory Committee.
Advisory Committee, okay. And then the GSC stands ready to assist in the future to help preserve the historic site and artifacts of the park. So I'll get rid of the opinion piece.
Yeah,
and leave it.
that's
Okay.
good. All right. So, all right, so we have a motion on that?
I'll make it.
I'll second it.
Okay, and we'll have a roll call vote here. Susan? You're muted. Can you unmute?
Are
There
you
you go.
talking to me?
Well, I will be talking to you in a minute.
Oh.
Susan, you're muted.
No.
You can vote now if you'd like, since you're talking, go ahead.
Yes, I support
All
that.
right, and Ralph will get you.
Yep.
And Jude,
Yes,
and Susan,
Yes, I support it.
okay, and I'll support that as well. So unanimous that we will contact the Gloucester the Sageway Park Advisory Committee
Mhm.
and have a representative come and meet with us. And we were interested in what they're doing, and so we'll let them know what this motion is. So
Okay.
and what it's about.
Who's gonna take the action item to contact them?
I can send
I-
a, I can send a letter, I can send a quick email to the committee as a whole.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, and
If
I
they,
know
if they can send a representative to our
Right.
next meeting would be great.
some active people besides David Dow would be. I
Yeah.
know David Benjamin is very
Yeah,
involved.
David Benjamin.
you-
David Benjamin was the chair for a little while, if I'm not mistaken,
Right.
because he came to one of our meetings. What I'll do is I'll write the letter and I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys can tell me what you want me to put in and
Okay.
tone me down if need be. With the
with
diplomacy, tone me down, make it a little diplomatic, and then I can send it off to I'll send it off to David and David.
I know it breaks your heart to see this happening.
Oh, that was like my project. I walked around with the archaeologist for she was wanted a 15-minute walk, and it was turned into 3 hours.
I think this, anyone has the knowledge of how important this is, you've got it. And then that's why it's so important that you're involved with this.
I'll draft something hopefully this week and send it to you guys to have you look at it.
Don't you think they'll be pretty much done by our next meeting?
There's not going to be, I mean, there's nothing that can be done. It's not going to undo the work. I'd be curious just to see the plans and see, I guess for me, it's to see what steps they took without us knowing. So the next time something like this happens, which I'm sure it will, we can have some kind of.
Right. And this is not to slap anyone's hands. This is really that we're concerned, that's all. And that is our domain, really, to have concern for the community. And like I said before, I believe the efforts of those that are involved in the Sageway Park Project Committee and all the people that are involved in that are really very important to the city. And I don't want them to get discouraged, upset with us or anyone, deter them from what their goal is. But we do want to be sure that we have some kind of a understanding of what they're doing, and so that there's anything that we can suggest, that there's an opportunity, and it would be something that wouldn't necessarily slow the project down or to change it to the point where they're not be able to get to their goal.
Well, I don't think at this point, anything we say or do is going to slow it down. It's more of
No.
just having it on record, because it's I look at it too as we're doing our due diligence, because their realm is beautifying Stage Fort Park. Ours is historic preservation.
Right.
We're staying in our lane with regard to that.
Right.
We wouldn't presume to be oh, I don't think you should put this memorial here or these plants here, because it doesn't, that's their purview, where ours is preserve historic assets in Gloucester.
Exactly. Yeah, very well said. Okay. And you'll take care of that, right?
Yes.
Jude? Okay,
Yep.
that's great. Thank you so much. All right, now let's see. Certified local government report and grant opportunities.
You missed the prior.
Oh, which one?
Yeah.
Which one?
historic structure preservation ordinance, the demolition delay.
Oh, all right now. Where are we here? Demolition delay,
Number 5.
number 5.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what, okay.
Yeah.
Historic Structure Preservation Ordinance. A review, an update proposal and next steps. Okay, you're on, Ralph, on that one.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to look at what I sent out a few weeks ago. I reorganized the document to make it more consumable, more readable. Made some edits. I think we talked about the edits before.
Right,
And it's and I also attended the meeting by the state a couple of weeks ago about putting in a demolition delay. And we're pretty much in line, thanks to the original draft, to what they suggest. The only area that we're out of alignment is the period. They recommend more than 6 months. We're talking 3 months here. But, you know, as you know, Bob, the mayor just wasn't going to support that.
well, yeah, and he also felt that that was what could be supported by the council as well. And
Right.
that was probably good advice. The thing about this is that it's not unheard of to have a 3-month delay. It's,
Yeah.
but it doesn't happen that often.
It's
Mhm.
better than none at all, though.
I
Oh,
think it's,
Exactly.
yeah, and at least if someone is going to do a demolition, then they will notify us, that the village inspector will notify us, in order to get the permit, they will need to come before us for it. And when that happens, that is when the clock will start to move.
That's my thinking. So if someone, and we're not gonna have a special meeting, we're not like the HDC where we'll have a special meeting for them. They'll come at the next monthly meeting. So
Right,
we could buy ourselves 2 or 3 weeks by doing that. So like, let's say we get notified on
right,
June 12th, our next meeting is June 29th.
right.
The clock starts ticking, so we bought those 2 weeks.
But it's more than that, Jude. I don't know if you looked at those timelines and process diagrams that I put as appendix. If you look at the way it was read, written, there's a number of steps that have to happen. The building commissioner sends us a notice. We make a determination. Then it has to go to a public hearing and then to the committee. Sorry, what are they? The council.
Yes.
Of the council, yes, yeah, that's right,
So
yes.
there's a
Yeah.
period, and in this way where, and I tried to shrink it as much as possible from the original timeline. There's a period when all that activity happens that is before the 3-month clock starts ticking. So
So-
in reality, it's more like a 6-month time between the initial request for demo delay to the end, assuming it happens, the end of
Right. Right, yeah,
in
so.
And the burden's not on us.
But the way the document is written originally is that we have to bring it to a city meeting, a public meeting. If we decide that it's worth preserving and it is of historic significance, we have to bring it to public, to the public, get public input, and then the councilors, the ward councilors, the councils make the decision whether it's delayed or not, based on our input and input from the city. Now, I'm not
Okay.
saying that's exactly the way it should be, but that's how it's written.
So the
I mean,
steps are,
I think public comment could go in favor of preservation
Oh, yeah.
because that rather than even that is a safeguard rather than having somebody buy something, tear it down, nobody knows about it, and then there's some garish structure put in its place that doesn't fit the integrity of the neighborhood,
Right.
and then have all the neighbors mad about that. I mean,
And
that's I think that's a good safeguard to have, is that
right.
the residents of let's say that neighborhood come out and are like, well, this is,
And it can happen in any neighborhood,
Oh, sure.
you know? So that a property could be bought and it could be torn down and something so much out of place could be built. So
Right.
the steps would be this, that the.
can I ask one more
yes.
question? So
Yeah.
in the historic district,
We have, it is totally, we have no authority in the historic district.
no, so within the historic district,
Yeah,
the Historic District Commission has some regulatory authority on structures in is there then like a de facto demolition ban within the historic district?
I'm not sure if it would be a ban, and then this was covered in the seminar I went to by the state. The historic district has the power to say yay or nay, period.
That's it.
Whether something should change, whether it's, the windows or tearing the building down.
So,
Right.
let me ask this,
Yeah,
if we're gonna concede is the wrong word, but if there is, we want what we want, and if 3 months is gonna get us what we want, and we do the 3 months, is there also an opportunity to say, meet with the Historic District Commission and maybe expand the historic district?
I
That's another matter, and I think that's something
Yeah.
that should be considered.
right. I think that's a separate question, but yeah, I mean, that's probably a very good idea.
I think definitely. That only makes sense, folks. I think we had that discussion in the past. That,
Like, for instance, on Essex Ave, there's a pocket of older homes with modern homes all around, but there's a pocket, I want to say there's like 4 or 5 of them. You get to exit 14. And I would hate to see someone move in and decide to tear one of those houses down.
Yeah.
Where,
Oh,
like, could that be a historic district?
and that can be. A historic district can be one structure. And it can
Yeah,
be.
they don't have to be adjacent.
That's
It
right.
it doesn't have to be adjacent, like where Tim lives. Like, if they extend the historic district a little bit, that's still adjacent to the historic district that exists right now, but could there be like
Right.
East Gloucester Square?
Which is a state.
Yeah,
That's a state historic district.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, okay.
On the ordinance, what I'm thinking, Bob, may make as next steps. Maybe we should go back to the mayor and to the city council and get their input again.
I agree, because this is not exactly what he was suggesting.
Right.
He was suggesting something that was more a shorter time.
Yeah,
That's one thought. And I think that it would be good to, and then we can defend why we are proposing this and not something else.
Yeah.
Now, I just wanted to say that the process here starts with the property owner. He files for a building permit for demolition, and then the building inspector has 14 days to forward this to the Historic Commission. And then we will take it up at our next meeting.
mhm,
And then we'll decide at that meeting if the demolition qualifies. If it's a property that it's okay to tear it down, we can say right then and there, we can
Right,
say.
that's the end of right.
We can, and that could happen,
Mhm.
And if we thought that there was something that was historic that we'd like to preserve, we can say that we are reluctant to let it go and let it be torn down. Now, what can happen is the property owner can come to a meeting and they can explain to us what they would do that would be different, that that would still accomplish preserving enough that we need to realize that some properties, because of the way they were built and the way they can be used today, if they're not useful, it's going to be very hard to save them. It needs to have a purpose.
Yeah.
And if somebody sees a property that, an example of this would be where the Beauport Hotel is built. That was really a very historic site. That's where Birdseye developed the frozen food process with freezing fish. And so that property could not be developed for anything that could justify saving the building. And so obviously we can see that what the property is now being used for is very useful and probably worthy. You know, that would be an example of a situation we would have probably allowed it to be torn down because of that.
Well, I think too, we need to make a distinction between, and not for us, not for our purposes, but for like the public's purposes. Cause like, again, going back to Dogtown as the what not to do, the public was grossly misinformed as to what National Register status was, and it turned public opinion against it. I
Yeah.
think we need to be,
And that's true of even people who are on the council.
yeah,
They-
I think we need to be very clear about the difference between an old building and a historic building. Like the old town hall, the Legion building is a historic building.
Right,
Some house from 1860 isn't necessarily historic, it's just old.
Right.
So there needs to be, and I think we need to be very clear in the ordinance of what constitutes historical significance versus, like, if there's, like, we have all these old boarding houses, right? Like we have all these old Victorian, they're apartments now, but they had borders, like they're basically being used for the same thing. There are a dime a dozen around certain parts of Gloucester. If one of those comes down, it's not the last example of a Victorian era boarding house. It doesn't have this significance. It's just an old building. So I think that on the flip side, like the house on the corner of Hovey Street there, Edward, that was the house that Newell lived in. And,
Mhm.
you know, given its location, he lived in that house. The stadium's named after him. His father was the mayor. You know, that would be a historical building. There are probably 7 or 8 other Victorian 1870s mansions on that street, but that would be a historical structure.
right.
I think those kind of examples, if the public is and the council is clear on what, like, we're not just trying to keep old buildings in Gloucester, we're trying to preserve the ones that have like historical meaning to them, like some architectural style, some
I think
last
yeah,
example.
I think the
of
best
something.
point. I think the point that I'm getting from you, and I think that's hitting the nail right on the head, and that is just because it's old doesn't mean it's historic.
Yeah.
And that is important to have that view when we're reviewing these, and that is the spirit that I believe will help a lot of people to understand this can work. Okay, so I was just thinking about the timing of all this, and we were talking about the 14 days. The Historic Commission is notified. We have we wait to our next meeting, which will probably be 2 or 3 weeks. It could be as soon as a week even, but we do have to give notice when we do that. Then the Historic Commission is going to notify the building inspector within 7 days whether the property qualifies for review. If non-qualifying, then the building permit involving demolition could be issued. So that's right there. It's done. And then if it is qualifying, then the next step would be we have 30 days to determine if the property is historical significant. In other words, we just we're going to saying this this has to be reviewed, and we need to find out. We feel that this is a property that could qualify for saving, and then we will determine that in the course of 30 days. And then after that, the decision is whether at that point, again, whether it's historically significant or not. And then if it's not significant, then at that point, at the end of a 30-day review period, the building permit involving demolition can be issued without further delay. So this is all before we get to the 3-month delay, I believe. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so then the next thing here is if the property is determined historically significant, then we would inform the building inspector at the end of the 30-day review period of his intention to hold a public hearing to determine further whether the qualifying historic significant property is preferably preserved. And the Historical Commission has 7 days to notify the city council, property owner, developer, all about his any constituents, and councils rather, or advisors in the public of a public hearing to be held, and to conduct that meeting or that hearing for the purpose of determining if or to what extent the community prefers that the property be preserved rather than abolished. And that hearing has to be done within 30 days. Now, within 30 days after that public hearing, and if it is thought to be restored, and the city council decides based on public opinion and the historical commission input, if they decide it is not preferably preserved, then the historical commission could notify the building inspector, and the building permit involving demolition could be issued without further delay. Now, I guess if they determine that it is preferably preserved, then the historic commission would notify the building inspector, and the owner would be a demolition delay. Now, I guess that was your point, Ralph, is that as it's going through this process, there are steps where we can bypass the delay before a property owner needs to tear down a property, and it's obvious that the property should be torn down, and we can determine that at different stages. We can determine it within the committee or within the commission, and then between the hearing and the council weighing in on that, then they would then they would have a say, and it gives us a little bit extra time, because when it gets to that point where if it goes beyond the historical commission to the public hearing and the city council, then you have to have notification, and you need to have time to notify the public of a public hearing, and all this is done. So it's it's up to 30 days from the time we say we want a public hearing. So there are steps in here. I think this could work, and through all this, I would say that the property owner should be in communication with us, and they can say, well, we don't really need to tear the whole thing down. We just need to modify what we're going to do here. If we preserve what is most important historically, can we do this? We might say, sure, we understand, and let it happen right then. We can always say that we'll allow it to be done. So if they want to keep on coming up with ideas with us and educating us and changing the way they want to do this, we can work out. The saying is you can come to an agreement and not have to go through the delay and go through all the hearings. And I think that would be the smartest thing for a developer or for a property owner to do. And that is, if they really want to move forward, is to try to avoid that. In the Fowler analysis, the property owner would be able to tear down their property. We're only delaying it for the purpose of saving it. Potentially, that we'd have a say in, it gives time for people to think, because sometimes something is torn down and afterwards somebody says, they tore that down, you know? So there,
I think too,
Yep.
like, we look at it, there's not really that many historically significant buildings getting torn down in Gloucester. I mean, the ones that have been
long time ago,
couple doozies, like
Yep.
ones that probably shouldn't have gone.
or parking lots
Yep,
on Middle Street. For one.
yep. But I think too, like, a delay is good for a person that bought something and wants to do something else with it, because it may buy them time to reconsider. And at the end of the day, like the big LLC companies that are just coming in to build housing they're gonna wait us out. They have deep pockets, and it's more of a, you know, I think it's cast a wide enough net and catch what we can catch. And maybe somebody in the process will be educated or enlightened to like value what they have, instead of like, it gives them another prospect of what their home could be, rather than, you know,
Right.
it may be something they didn't think of. It's not like,
Right,
I think people look at organizations like us as like trying to get in their way, where they, you know, we always look at, like, I think we look at the big companies coming in, and the big developers, and they're gonna knock down all these old buildings, and they're gonna put up high-rise apartments and blah, 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 blah. And I don't, you know, I don't think we should come off as anti-development. I think the biggest net the biggest fish we're gonna catch in our net are gonna be the people that are just buying an old home and wanna, you know, it needs work and they wanna do it, and they're like, oh, well, let's just knock it down and put something new up. Where with this, even a 3-month, you know, even a month and a half delay might get them to look at it. Like, they don't necessarily know what they bought. Like, they don't necessarily know the old house. I mean, I think there are certain buildings that
right,
I would love if the city council would just say, these buildings cannot be knocked down, you know, and thankfully they're in, you know, the like the Babson Alling House, they're in the museum's hands. They're not going anywhere. Town halls, you know, the Legion buildings in the city's hands, but there
Right.
are, I'm sure, other buildings in Gloucester that are, if someone didn't know the significance, would tear it down and put something more modern in. And I
Well,
think those are
I'm just-
that would be our targeted audience.
I'm
right,
just thinking how if we had, this was in place when we first bought our house here, out on the point, Pyatt Andrews house went on the market for the first time out of the family, because, you know, the generations, it had been split so much, nobody really had the money to buy it or take care of it. And when it was on the market, I went in to look at it, and it was really in good shape. I mean, they, you know, had 2 kitchens, whatever, had some screwy stuff. And it got sold. And next thing I knew, one day, gone. They tore the whole thing down. All that just lost in literally one day. It
yeah,
was February, it was in
Like
December, and it was awful. So
like, I would love if it's a concession that the city council could get, or we could get from them. Like, and I mean, maybe this is down the line, something like that. Like, we know it's Pyatt Andrews' house. We know George Stacy's house. We know Edward Newell's house. Like, certain houses that have like that top tier on the pyramid of importance that aren't in city hands. It would be great to see those preserved if they're in good condition. Because, like, are you familiar with the house that's next to Strong Equipment on Weston
Yes.
Ave? Like
Yes,
that's a nice looking old house, but it's in shambles. The one there's a little like 1750s house when you come out Hesperus, there's a little white house tucked in there. Like that's another one that's in shambles, you know,
Right.
with vinyl
I mean,
siding.
the Stacy house is a prime example. It sold last year to a private person. It needs at a minimum a full gut. And who knows if a developer bought it and wants to clean sweep it. They could at this point because there is nothing stopping them from doing that at this point. But that is a historic home right on the canal.
Yep.
The family that is named after. So it's like there should be something like this in at least in concession so that they can't go ahead and demolish it without having some oversight ahead of time.
Right.
They
Right.
really could do that in the next 6 months if they wanted to. Like they bought the
Yeah.
house and they can do whatever they want to it at this point.
Right.
It'd be nice to have an enumerated list, an enumerated but not exclusive list of places that have some that top tier of significance.
Sure.
But
What is
are we
the
gonna get it?
initial process in terms of getting these homes? Like, is it up to the building inspector when the permits come in to then funnel potential houses that may fall within this category to us? Like, how do we know when?
No, there's some criteria in the, if you read the document. It's
Okay.
anything that's, I think, is it 50 or 75? Maybe it's, I forget.
Okay,
Anything that is a certain age,
Mhm.
has to get
they
passed over
would
to
come
us.
to us. The building commissioner wouldn't make a judgment
Okay,
other than it meets this very clear, specific criteria. We would
which is
want, we would
date of build,
make-
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tim, did you get the delay? Did they,
Not
Okay.
the initial, no, I came way later than that started, yeah.
can we add Tim, even though he's not officially on yet for whatever reason?
But we can talk about that at the end.
It's been like 3 months, but can we just like tag his
More than
email
that.
and send him stuff? Cause
I'll send it to you, Tim. I
I-
didn't realize you didn't see it.
I get the sense that the city thinks Tim's trying to go on the historical district commission.
Yeah.
They
And-
like, yeah, it's happened. a
They're
couple times
getting
now.
ready to send him to like basic training. They're like chipping away. Interviews. I mean, maybe Bob or Ralph, can one of you guys email the mayor?
Yeah.
Cause and
I
just-
followed up again with a third email last week asking where we were at with this, because it's 3.5 months out from my initial email with my resume and my intent letter. And it's been 3.5 months. I did get a phone call interview from I think he's the community panel director.
he's Greg's boss.
Yeah, something like that. And he gave me a phone interview and said, oh, well, that sounds all good. I'll talk to the mayor tomorrow and we'll move forward from there. And that was a month and a half ago. So then I followed up again last week and CC'd him, the mayor, the mayor's secretary, and nothing, not even ever.
I feel like the city's not gonna be like, oh, no, you can't volunteer on a 6-person
know, right?
committee. So I feel bad because like I didn't send you minutes,
Yeah,
you know,
There's no need to send it to me. yet,
I
'cause I'm
think
not-
we're at a
not
point
in.
now where we can inquire about this and move it forward. I think it's just there's so
sorry
much
to sidetrack.
that office is probably dealing with, that they just didn't get around to doing this. And I think we just need to, the squeaky wheel get the oil, and that's what we need to do. We need to get in touch with somebody. I will call the mayor's office and I can get results. So,
I'm sure.
yeah, I'm gonna call the mayor's office.
All right, well, thank you for looking.
I
into it.
might even drop in. Okay, so
Yeah,
I just, go ahead.
No, I was
Go
just gonna say, I have to drop at 8:30.
Okay,
So could we just
Okay.
define the next steps for the ordinance?
okay. I had a thought on this too.
Okay,
Is there anything in here? I'm not recalling everything that's in here. Is there anything in here about what constitutes a demolition? For example, if somebody wants to take out all the windows and put in renewable type windows.
Yeah.
Replacement windows. Is there anything in here that would,
Yeah, that, there is criteria in there about what is a demo. I think it's maybe 25% of the building or the facade. There are criteria there.
about the
It
windows?
doesn't get as
Did you
granular.
mention the
as-
windows? The
No,
windows are very important because you can't put, you can do a lot of things to a property. But if you do something to the windows,
yeah,
you can't bring that back.
no, it's not in there. It
And that's
doesn't,
what's happening in Gloucester.
yeah,
What's happening in Gloucester, they're losing the character of the homes. You can vinyl side a property, it doesn't really destroy it. You're covering it up, but you're not destroying it. You take out the windows and the doors and you've lost the history. You can't bring that back too easily. It's very difficult. And I look at the city and what I'm seeing happening, I'm remembering what the city looked like many years ago. It's a shame.
Yeah.
So that is a great concern to me, the windows, and doors for that matter. And so I think that would be something we want to make sure that's in this. And I'm going to say we're going to move on. Now you wanted to see where we're going to go from this point with this now. What's the next step?
yeah.
Well, I guess you mentioned meeting with the mayor. Maybe we want to meet with
Yeah.
the mayor.
The way I'm thinking is that there's kind of 3 subsequent steps. Meet with the mayor first. If we get by him, maybe float it to the city council.
Yep.
And if we get by them, and not saying that they'll commit, but if they're open to it, then I think we need to get some public input.
Well, you will. You have to do that. This will not happen without a public
Right.
hearing.
Right.
And I think the first step with the council is that this will get referred to a committee,
Mhm.
city council committee.
Oh,
And then they will make a recommendation. They'll review it and they'll make a recommendation to the council. And then it will go to a council meeting, and they will schedule a public hearing on it.
Right.
And then it eventually will be voted on. It's
So
not an easy, it won't be easy here in Gloucester to do
Oh,
this.
no, no.
But it's not an easy thing to do anyway,
Right.
because I understand that people do not want to add any more so-called red tape to the process. I was out of customers and they were saying that they put a permit in to extend a deck on the house. And it really is not a real big deal, but they said what they have to go through in terms of time that they're losing, it'll be next year before they get it done, So I understand that the process of all the permitting that somebody needs to do in the city is very cumbersome. And I think that is something that needs to be improved.
Yeah.
But I like to think that this isn't one of those things where we're going to add a burden generally to people who are doing things, because most of the things that people want to do would not be affected by this. It's
Right.
really, as you were saying, there are only so many properties, or I think Jude, you said it, there are
Yeah.
only so many properties that really would really be affected by this.
I mean,
It's
this-
not a lot of properties.
This also has
Yeah.
the effect of, like, maybe people are more discriminatory about what they buy if there's a preservation
Similar to
ordinance
the discretion of
in-
buying in the historical
in
district.
place. They might be like, oh, well, I don't want to buy this place because I have to go through X, Y, and Z. And then someone that's willing to preserve it might want to buy that instead. So I think there's some incentivization to having it.
Well,
And I think that as to like time frame, I feel like we throw it on the mayor's desk and see what he has to say about it. It's
I mean, I can reach out to the mayor's office again and ask for a
Yeah.
follow-up meeting.
yeah.
If,
That would be great. Yeah,
Okay.
please do that. Yeah, that'd be great. So I just want to say that I wouldn't like to think that really we are going to interfere with the value of somebody who wants to sell their property. If somebody will not buy a property because they think they might have a problem getting by the historical commission, and there'll be a demolition delay. And it doesn't give them the opportunity, because they still could buy the property and come before the historical commission, and we might say, oh, go ahead, no problem, we'll notify the building inspector to give the permit. Most cases, that's probably gonna be true. And in a few cases, we probably say, well, you have to do it this way. Is there something you could preserve here, And
So I was looking at it more of like, if this is in place, it incentivizes people, like someone that just wants to buy old houses and tear them down and put up condos or duplexes or whatever, might look somewhere else, because those places are going to be a dime a dozen, where
Right.
they might say, oh, I don't want to just go tear down these two old
well,
houses.
if you are a property owner, Jude, and you were gonna attend in a public hearing, and you got up and made that statement, you might say, well, I don't want to lose the value of my property. I want to be able to sell it to a larger market. So I don't think we should go there on that,
Well, I
And
think,
that might be true. That may be true in a few cases, but not generally. I don't think it's going to be true.
I think it would be actually the opposite, in the sense that if it does have historical significance already, which is the only case that this would apply of us stepping in, I feel like the only people that would buy it is someone who wanted the historical aspect of the home, so they wouldn't be tearing it down. I think it'd be a lot bigger. I think if someone already knew it had historical significance before they were buying it, they wouldn't be tearing it down, I think, is how I'd look at it. I think within the wording of how we present it, it really needs to have an emphasis that this will only affect homes of significant historical value to the city, not old homes. I think the public will have a much better view of it if we emphasize that, rather than saying anything that you want to tear down that's older than 70 years old has to go through us. I think people will be really deterred by that, or really see red flags and tape. But I
Right.
think we put a large emphasis on only historical significant homes in Gloucester this will affect at all. Everything else, whether it's an old home, doesn't apply. And I think that will probably get accepted a lot better.
Right.
Like
Now-
in reality, this affects a very small amount of structures in
Yeah.
Gloucester. And I think people, when they hear about this stuff, they think it's everything.
Correct,
And
which
it
is why
really
we
only affects
emphasize it.
a very
Right.
small percentage of
Well,
houses that someone might buy in Gloucester.
Yeah, there are neighborhoods that are historic. Now, in general, the neighborhood is historic, architecturally and historically is significant. But there may be a house contained in that neighborhood that might not really be considered historic in itself, but it fits the streetscape and the architecture of the neighborhood. If somebody tears that down and builds another home that doesn't fit the same appearance, streetscape wise, roof lines and so on, and there's a house on Centennial Avenue, they had a fire. When they built the house, they did not do the same roof line that would also be like the other homes. And that stretch of homes from Beacon Street to Emerson Avenue is it's very iconic in terms of its the roof lines all are very similar, and they're just an interesting thing to see. And when you see something that isn't fitting in that, it kind of breaks it up. So I think that you have to look at the fact that the property individually might not be so historic, but the neighborhood is historic. So that is always something that we probably would look at, to be honest about that, with that. Yeah, I mean, somebody famous didn't sleep there, as they say, or there wasn't some kind of a notable event that we knew of. And so there was nothing to tie it to history. No important person lived there, but the home was architecturally significant to the neighborhood. That is what could affect whether it would be considered for a demolition delay. So that we need to be honest on that part of it. And I don't think anyone would ever think that we wouldn't have ever thought about that, that we would look to preserve a structure that is fitting in with the neighborhood. Now, sometimes if something needs to be torn down, there was a house on Western Avenue right in the middle of, not too far from the monument on the, there was a row of houses there, right near the, it was like, I think it's next to the Good Harbor, what do they call it? The Harbor View Inn. Next door, there was a house that was very, very old. I had been in the house. It never really was built with a lot of quality, and it didn't have a good flow, and it couldn't really be used for much. It was very, very difficult. And anything they would do to it would be very hard to do because it wasn't built with quality. But I did value the property for historic sake. Well, they tore it down and they built a property that fits in with the neighborhood. You wouldn't know that anything ever really happened, and it looks really good. And so there are things like that that can happen, and that could affect what, and like I said, a building needs to be able to have value, needs to have a purpose. When you don't have a purpose, it's going to be hard to save it. So that
Well,
is the,
again, another selling point too is like the Beauport Hotel. That
Right.
fits the
Right.
the harbor view, the harbor scape or whatever, better
Right.
than the Bird's Eye building did.
well,
all
certainly historically it
Yes.
does, because the
They-
history was there before with like the tavern.
Yep.
And there was another property there. They had the same kind of roof line.
And even the condo they put halfway down the boulevard still fits the roof line. So I mean,
That's
I
the one
feel
I'm
like
talking
if
about.
if
Yes.
we're gonna pitch it to the city council and the mayor,
Right,
I feel like we pitch it in the sense of maybe even the delay will get someone to review their architectural plans and be like, well, I do want to tear it down because the building's, I mean, it's falling apart.
right,
But I'll build something that fits. Maybe I'll alter the roof line, or maybe I'll put like a gambrel roof on instead of a pitched roof or whatever to fit the neighborhood. I feel
Right.
like if we sell that to the mayor, that like, this is not anti-development, this is not, we want to save every termite-eaten ratty old building in Gloucester. We want to just preserve,
right,
like, there are going to be certain buildings that I feel like at some point it's going to be a fight about, because it is like, maybe they're one of the few intact first period houses, but I
Right.
feel like
but we
also-
only have so much time to convince someone not to tear it down, and that's our delay. After that, they can tear it down, so.
I also feel like people who are gonna buy, what is it, the Riggs house over on like Vine Street over by.
Yes,
I feel like
right.
someone who buys that they're not looking at that property as like, oh, I'm gonna put 5 duplexes here. So I think the public is, if we can sell it to the public, the city council will follow suit. And I
Right.
think it's
And-
just
and
a
I think-
matter of selling ourselves as not being anti-development.
Right, and I think that's very important that we are one of the most historic communities in the country, and certainly on the North Shore. And here on the North Shore, one of the very few communities that does not have a demolition delay. There are communities that don't have anywhere near the history of Gloucester or their historical significance, and we don't have a demolition delay. Now, we need to have that for that, I mean, that only would make sense. Now, I just wanted to say that some homes that were really let go, like the house next to the Strong area there over Western Avenue, and another property was mentioned. There's something called demolition by neglect. Now, that can also be something that we can address in this ordinance. Because someone can say, well, I can't demolish it, but I can neglect it. And then after it's neglected, I can tear it down. So the other thing too is there's a requirement that whoever owns a property that's under review has to be sure that the property is protected. When I say that, they can't turn the heat off in the winter. That they have to be sure that they've taken care of it so it doesn't burn down and things like that, you know. So there's things along that line. And since, Ralph, you have to leave soon.
Yeah, I
so-
have to go at 8:30.
Okay, so let's just run down through this real quick here. I just wanted to say that the sign for the green, as you probably all know, I think everyone got the email. It's supposed to be put in this week. I did see somebody digging today. I went by there, but I couldn't stop. They were digging near the, there's a rock with a plaque on it. What's the name of the street? That's right there.
Ashland Place.
Ashland Place, thank you. And that would be the law school. I think that's a location. So, and I kind of thought that what I'd like to see happen here is to get in touch with the newspaper and have those of us in the commission that can be there. And after the sign is put in, and have a photo bringing the attention that this new sign has been installed and that this green exists, and maybe a little story about the green. So is that something that could be of interest to the commission?
Sure. I'm willing to attend.
Right, so why don't you, those who are interested in attending, could send me an email, and then I will see if I can arrange something with the paper, and get a photo of us at the new sign when they put it up, and maybe somebody here could, Jude, you're awfully good on this kind of stuff, maybe you could write up on this.
I was gonna say, I can try to dig out something that the paper wants to
That would be awesome.
quote or misquote us on.
Okay.
I just need some lead time to.
Yeah,
or
that's
something.
okay. That's all right, because they don't need to put it in any time period, you know.
Yeah.
This is news that could hold, and I think they'd love to have it.
I just have a quick
oh.
question about that sign. Did they spell since wrong or?
Yep.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. All right.
Yep, I saw it yesterday and I've looked at that sign when we were doing this, my first time on the historical commission, and never noticed that. We knew that the "you are here" is wrong, but I didn't know, I just saw "since" was spelled wrong. I was just gonna
Anyway,
get
I
out and
just-
do
I
like,
thought
Oh, what
maybe
is- what-
it was,
I'm sorry, what was spelled wrong?
the word "since" is spelled
Oh.
CINCE on it.
Oh,
It's something that can't, it's not something that can't be fixed with like a little white Sharpie or something.
yeah, okay.
I noticed that the other day,
Yeah, that's something.
but it's been sitting in the DPW for 7 years, so
Yeah, I know it. Well, it's better up even if it was wrong.
yeah.
Okay, we can talk about the award ceremony later, because we're not gonna do it this year, just to save on time. And we'll also, we can bring up in the future another meeting, so we've been, this meeting's gone long enough. The certified local government report and the grant opportunities, and that's a whole subject of itself. I think this was very ambitious tonight. We actually had to add a couple of things in here that we hadn't planned on, so that also extended the meeting a little bit. I'd like to try to keep these meetings down to as close to an hour as possible.
As would I.
Huh?
As would I.
Oh, yeah. Okay, very good. So will we have a vote to adjourn? Do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
All right, I'll second that motion.
All right.
All right, and the roll call vote, Susan?
Yes.
Okay, Jude
Yes.
and Ralph,
Yep.
Lillian,
yes.
and Bob here, yes. Okay, very good. So we got through this, and we'll make up a new agenda, and we'll probably meet the first Monday in June. I don't know the date right now, but that's when I think we could meet again.
I think
Yep.
it's like the 4th.
I think,
The 5th.
okay, and I think we're getting into a tempo here. And Ralph has been doing the agendas, and he's doing really good on this. And the city's been great on getting this, posting it for us and getting the Zoom meeting set up and also to notify those who would like to attend. I will get in touch with the mayor's office regarding, and I'll also call the paper, or you want to call the paper, Jude?
No.
Huh?
No.
No, I'll call the paper. Okay, I'll call the paper and I'll get in touch with
I'll give him some history.
yeah, that would be fine, yeah. And so I'll get in touch with the mayor's office and I'll call the paper. And so then we'll get things moving.
Oh,
I
one last
just-
thing, one last
Yes.
thing. After that public records request, the clerk has been on me about how to post minutes.
Yes,
I believe I just have to email them to agendas and minutes or whatever.
yeah,
So I can do that. Sandy used to do it. I used to just take the minutes and send them out and she used to post them.
yeah,
And I think when she left, that fell into the, I don't
Yeah.
know. So
They-
I can,
yeah,
she
they want
sent me
draft
the-
on them until they're approved too.
yeah, so they won't post them. I sent the one out that I didn't put draft on it and I think she did it for me.
Yep,
But yeah, we're out of compliance, so I will try my best to do that.
Jude, I can send the two that we approved tonight.
Okay,
And the draft
Okay.
of this evening's.
all
So I'll
right.
take care of the three.
In the future, I can do it.
Yeah, don't, it's fine.
So, yeah, she was just on us about it, so.
Okay. Alrighty, I'm gonna
Okay.
jump. Thank you very much.
okay,
and
All right.
okay,
See you soon.
see you next week, see you next month.
Bye-bye.
All
Bye-bye.
right, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. How do I get out of here? Let's see.
You're still here. We're here alone.
Hey, where's my husband?
There's a thing up here, end.
Yes.
Tap your screen and end. There's a thing up on the right-hand corner of my screen here. It says end. If you tap the screen, it will illuminate.
Here. I have a helper.
Gonna help her. I think we just do this. We just shut it down and leave.
Okay,